Peace, peace, people. Hey, today is Halloween or All Hallows Eve, if you want to call it that. Did you know that Halloween was once a holiday that was instituted and sanctioned by the Christian church before it became all of the things that it is now? You didn't? Okay, well, I ain't either, but we're going to get into it and we're going to learn together. All right, stay tuned. Let's get it. They call me the voodoo mama, and I know the name is wrong. They call me the voodoo mama, and I know the name is wrong. Lord, I raise my hand, though the sky begins to cry. They call me the voodoo mama. All right, peace, people. Welcome to your Mima's World, the Jelly Moose's Cafe. I am your hostess, Mima, and as always, it is good to be black in the land of the living once again. What you are hearing at the beginning of the show is The Voodoo Woman by Coco Taylor. Um, I do not own the rights to it, but I wanted to play that one. I like the song. I have created quite a playlist, a Hoodoo Voodoo playlist. All the songs that I play on my episodes, you can find on YouTube. All right. So let's get into it. Today is October 31st. It is the last day of Hoodoo Heritage Month, but we know it's not the last day for us hoodoos. We'll be hoodoo tomorrow and the day after that, and for hope, for the rest of our lives, we will still continue to be hoodoo. But it's also Halloween or Hallows Eve. And, we've always celebrated or not. October 31st is Halloween, but most of us don't really know the history of it. We just always just kind of go along to get along and celebrate whatever people put in front of us to celebrate. So I thought it would be cool today to talk about the history of Halloween and how we got to where we are today with it. So let's get into it. Like, share, and subscribe. I am close to 100 subscribers. I wanted to get to 100 by the end of the year. And thank you all that have subscribed. Thank you all that have liked and shared these podcasts, these episodes. I appreciate you more than you could possibly know. Again, if you have learned anything from my episodes and you would like to continue to hear different stories from our ancestors, and not always about hoodoo, but just our ancestors and what they went through back in the day, which got us to where we are today, and honoring their legacy. Donations are appreciated. My Cash App scrolls across the bottom. All right, let's get into it. So, what is the history of Halloween? Halloween's origins date back to the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain. The Celts who lived 2,000 years ago, keep that date in mind, mostly in the area that is now known as Ireland, the United Kingdom, and northern France, celebrated their new year on November 1st. This day marked the end of summer and the harvest and the beginning of the dark, cold winter, a time of year that was often associated with human death. Celts believed that on the night before the new year, the boundary between the worlds of the living and the dead became blurred. On the night of October 31st, they celebrated Samhain, when it was believed that the ghosts of the dead returned to Earth. All right. In addition to causing trouble and damaging crops, Celts thought that the presence of otherworldly spirits made it easier for the Druids or Celtic priests to make predictions about the future. For a people entirely dependent on the volatile natural world, these prophecies were an important source of comfort during the long, dark winter. To commemorate the event, Druids built huge and sacred bonfires where people gathered to burn crops and animals as sacrifices to the Celtic deities. During the celebration, the Celts wore costumes, typically consisting of animal heads and skins, and attempted to tell each other's fortunes. When the celebration was over, they relit their hearth fires, which they had extinguished earlier that evening, from the sacred bonfire to help protect them during the coming winter. By 43 AD, the Roman Empire had conquered the majority of Celtic territory. No surprise there. In the course of the 400 years that they ruled the Celtic lands, two festivals of Roman origin were combined with the traditional Celtic celebration of Samhain. The first was Feralia, a day in late October when the Romans traditionally commemorated the passing of the dead. Again, commemorating the passing of the dead. The second was a day to honor Pomona, the Roman goddess of fruit and trees. The symbol of Pomona is the apple, and the incorporation of this celebration into Samhain probably explains the tradition of bobbing for apples that is practiced today on Halloween. So people are bobbing for apples and don't understand that they are paying homage to a Roman goddess. All right, so All Saints Day. On May 13, 609, Pope Boniface IV dedicated the Pantheon in Rome in honor of all Christian martyrs, and the Catholic feast of All Martyrs' Day was established in the Western Church. Pope Gregory III later expanded the festival to include all saints, as well as all martyrs, and moved the observance from May 13th to November 1st. By the ninth century, the influence of Christianity had spread into Celtic lands where it gradually blended with and supplanted older Celtic rites. In the year 1000, the church, the church made November 2nd All Souls Day, a day to honor the dead. And now the church will tell you that honoring and venerating your dead relatives is blasphemous, necromancy, and against God after they instituted a day and set it aside to honor your dead. It's widely believed today that the church was attempting to replace the Celtic Festival of the Dead with a related church sanctioned holiday. So it ain't spiritual until the church says spiritual. All Souls Day was celebrated similarly to Samhain, with big bonfires, parades, and dressing up in costumes as saints, angels, and devils. The All Saints Day celebration was also called All Hallows or All Hallowmas, from Middle English Hallowmasse, meaning All Saints Day. And the night before it, the traditional night of Samhain in the Celtic religion, began to be called All Hallows Eve and eventually Halloween. All right. So, how did it get to America? The celebration of Halloween was extremely limited in the colonial New England because of the rigid Protestant belief system. Halloween was more commonly recognized in Maryland and in the southern colonies. As the beliefs and customs of different European ethnic groups and American Indians meshed, a distinctly American version of Halloween began to emerge. The first celebrations included play parties, which were public events held to celebrate the harvest. Neighbors would share stories of the dead, tell each other's fortune, dance, and sing. Colonial Halloween festivities also feature the telling of ghost stories and mischief making of all kinds. And by the middle of the 19th century, annual autumn festivities were common. Halloween was not yet celebrated everywhere in the country. In the second half of the 19th century, America was flooded with new immigrants. Ooh, timely message. These new immigrants, especially the millions, I'm starting to sound like The Rock. The millions and millions of Irish fleeing the Irish potato famine helped to popularize the celebration of Halloween nationally. Now, how dare these immigrants come into our country with these ungodly ways and these ungodly ideas about Halloween? And how dare this country co opt those ungodly ideas and those ungodly ways and capitalize on it? How dare you? What will the immigrants bring in next? Oh my God. All right, so what's the history of trick or treating? So, borrowing from European traditions, Americans began to dress up in costumes and go house to house asking for food or money. I remember back in the day, there were some people who gave like pennies and dimes and nickels. It was a practice that eventually became today's trick or treat tradition. Now, young women believed that on Halloween they could divine the name or the appearance of their future husband. Okay. By doing tricks with yarn, apple pairings, or mirrors. Now, I don't know what kind of tricks they was doing with yarn, apple pairings, and mirrors, but hey, okay, if it work, it worked. In the late 1800s, there was a move in America to mold Halloween into a holiday more about community and neighborly get togethers than about ghosts, pranks, and witchcraft. Now, this was in the late 1800s, so we know that the neighborly communities want us, unless we were doing it within our own communities. Because in the late 1800s, we had just got our freedom. We won't go to nobody's house trick or treating, dressing up, in costumes and knocking on somebody's door. We won't participate in that in the 1800s, unless again it was within our own communities. At the turn of the century, the neighborly at the turn of the century, Halloween parties for both children and adults became the most common way to celebrate the day. Parties focused on games, food, and of the season and festive costumes. Parents were encouraged by newspapers and community leaders to take anything frightening or grotesque out of the Halloween celebrations. Because of these efforts, Halloween lost most of its superstitious and religious overtones by the beginning of the 20th century. And we know that churches today don't necessarily call it Halloween, they call it Harvest Festival events. And it's basically the same thing. The kids still dress up in costumes, it's not grotesque, like they said, not monstrous witches or devil costumes, but they still dress up in costumes and they go to church, and some people will hand out candy. And some churches may still bob for apples. Now, the black churches, we don't do that because we ain't going to stick our face in nobody else's water that they've been sucking on an apple and us, we suck on it too. We're not doing that. But at some white churches, they probably still bob for apples, not understanding that they are honoring and celebrating the Celtic goddess Pomona. All right. So by the 1920s and 30s, Halloween had become a secular but community centered holiday with parades and town-wide Halloween parties as a featured entertainment. Despite the best efforts of many schools and communities, vandalism began to plague some celebrations in many communities during this time. By the 1950s, town leaders had successfully limited vandalism, and Halloween had evolved into a holiday directed mainly at the young. Due to the high numbers of young children during the 1950s baby boom, parties moved from town civic centers into the classroom or home where they could be more easily accommodated. Between 1920 and 1950, the centuries old practice of trick or treating was also revived. Trick or treating was relatively inexpensive. It was a way for the entire community to share the Halloween celebration. And in theory, families could also prevent tricks from being played on them by providing the neighborhood children with small treats. Thus, a new American tradition was born, and it has continued to grow. Today, today in 2024, Americans spend more than $11 billion annually on Halloween, making it the country's second largest commercial holiday after Christmas. Oh boy. All right, let's see. What else does it say? What else does it say? We know about Halloween movies that they show this time of year. Well, actually, they show them all times of year. The cult favorite Halloween franchise back in 1978, they did a remake of it in 2018, 2021, and 2022. And I can famously say I have never seen any of them. I've never seen the Halloween movies. I know who Michael Myers is. I know he's the dude with the mechanic overalls and the mask on his face. Isn't he? Or is that Jason? I don't know. But I've never seen any of the Halloween movies. I've never seen any of the Friday the 13th movies. So I don't know which one is which. Now I have seen Nightmare on Elm Street. I saw the first one and the second one, and then they got really crazy. But that first Nightmare on Elm Street scared the bejesus out of me. And I slept with the lights on for a very long time because I have very vivid dreams and it scared me. We have slasher movies like Scream, but then more family oriented or more friendly movies: Hocus Pocus, The Nightmare Before Christmas, Beetlejuice, and The Great Pumpkin. I wonder if that's coming on tonight. The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. I have to check and see. I like that one. All right, so there's something called All Souls Day and Soul Cakes. The American Halloween tradition of trick or treating probably dates back to early All Souls Day parades in England. During the festivities, poor citizens would beg for food, and families would give them pastries called soul cakes in return for their promise to pray for the family's dead relatives. Oh, wait a minute, let me read that again. So, poor citizens would beg for food, and families would give them pastries called soul cakes in return for their promise to pray for the family's dead relatives. So they had the poor people to pray for the family's dead relatives. Okay. Um. mm, the distribution of soul cakes was encouraged by the church as a way to replace the ancient practice of leaving food and wine for roaming spirits. What that sound like to y'all? That sound like you giving an offering on your altar to your ancestors, those roaming spirit ancestors, and they even say that it is an ancient practice. Ooh, child, come on. The practice, which was referred to as going a souling, was eventually taken up by children who would visit the houses in their neighborhood and be given ale, food, and money. So that's kind of like another form of trick or treating. All right. Black cats. Why are they bad luck and why are they associated with Halloween? The tradition of dressing in costume for Halloween was both European and Celtic roots. Hundreds of years ago, winter was an uncertain and frightening time. Food supplies often ran low. And for many people afraid of the dark, the short days of winter were full of constant worry. On Halloween, when it was believed that ghosts came back to the earthly world, people thought that they would encounter ghosts if they left their homes. To avoid being recognized by these ghosts, people would wear masks when they left their homes after dark so that the ghosts would mistake them for fellow spirits. On Halloween, to keep ghosts away from their houses, people would place bowls of food outside their homes to appease the ghosts and prevent them from attempting to enter. Okay, that doesn't tell me about black cats. I think I clicked on the wrong thing. All right, we'll keep moving. The goal of early costumes wasn't necessarily to dress up as a particular creature or character, but rather to conceal one's identity in a spooky way that evoked themes like ghosts, witches, black cats, or the moon. A man dressed in a cat costume for Halloween. There's a picture of it. All right, so they wore costumes not to scare people, but to conceal their identity so that spirits would think they were spirits as well. Okay. All right. Black cats, ghosts, and ghosts on Halloween. Halloween has always been a holiday filled with mystery, magic, and superstition. It began as a Celtic end of summer festival during which people felt especially close to deceased relatives and friends. For these friendly spirits, they set plate. Ooh, child. For these friendly spirits, they set places at the dinner table, left treats on doorsteps and along the side of the road, and lit candles to help loved ones find their way back to the spirit world. All right, so that's a mouthful right there. That's hoodoo all day long, right? We sit things we sit food out on our altars. Some people set it out on their dinner table. We leave food at different places. Some people have their altar actually on their floor. They leave treats on doorsteps along the side of the road. At the crossroads, you go and you make offerings. You go to the park and you make offerings at trees. So this is nothing different from what we do in Hoodoo, except we don't limit it to one day of the year. We do it just about every day. Of course, we light candles. We've always lit candles to help find their way, help the loved ones find their way back to the spirit world. Today's Halloween ghosts are often depicted as more fearsome and malevolent, and are and I can't say the word. Man, 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 man. I ain't even gonna try to say it. For some reason, my tongue just won't say it. But you know what I'm saying. Our costumes and superstitions are scarier too. We avoid crossing paths with black cats, afraid they may bring us bad luck. The idea has its roots in the Middle Ages, when many people believed that witches avoided detection by turning themselves into black cats. We try not to walk under ladders for the same reason. This superstition may have come from the ancient Egyptians. All right, so we know that the ancient Egyptians are black, and we know they're not Egyptians, they're Kemites. They believed the triangles were sacred. Um, it also may have something to do with the fact that walking under a leaning ladder tends to be fairly unsafe. All right. So there are some Halloween matchmaking rituals. What about Halloween traditions and beliefs that today's trick or treaters have forgotten about? Many of these rituals focus on the future instead of the past, and the living instead of the dead. In particular, many had to do with helping young women identify their future husbands. Once again, these women was desperate, weren't they? Reassuring them that they would someday, with luck, by next Halloween, be married. In the 18th century in Ireland, a matchmaking cook might a ring in ooh, bury a ring in her mashed potatoes on Halloween night, hoping to her true love to the diner who found it, hoping to bring true love to the diner who found it. Okay, so she would bury her ring in the mashed potatoes and then serve it, and I guess the man that found it would be her true love. In Scotland, fortune tellers recommended that an eligible young woman name a hazelnut for each of her suitors and then toss the nuts whew, into the fireplace. The nut that burned to ashes rather than popping or exploded, the story went, represented the girl's future husband. In some versions of this legend, the opposite was true. The nut that burned away symbolized a love that would not last. I don't think you want to be looking for your husband and then burning nuts. That's kind of counterproductive. That's just my opinion. Women tossed apple peels over their shoulders, hoping that the peels would fall onto the floor in the shape of their future husband's initials. Wow. Trying to learn about their futures by peering at egg yolks floating in a bowl of water, and stood in front of mirrors in darkened rooms, holding candles and looking over their shoulders for their husbands' faces. Now, I have heard about that one. Other rituals were more competitive. At some Halloween parties, the first guest to find a burr on a chestnut hunt would be the first to marry. At others, the first successful apple bobber would be the first one down the aisle. All right. All right, so that's it about Halloween and its origins. And you can see a lot of things that they did back in the day. Of course, probably got from our ancestors, our ancient ancestors, and a lot of things that they did, we do again in hoodoo, leaving out offerings for our ancestors, lighting candles for them to find their way. Um, Sometimes we light candles for the recently deceased so that they can find their way to the ancestral realm. Sometimes we light candles for our ancient um, deceased ancestors so they can find their way to us when we need their help. Definitely talks about going to the crossroads and leaving an offering at the crossroads. So, Halloween, All Saints Day, All Souls Day are really not that different from what we practice in Hoodoo today. You know, I work with a young lady, she's Puerto Rican, and she definitely celebrates All Souls Day. I know it's called something else, and I'm not even going to butcher it and try to pronounce it, but you know what I'm talking about. And her mother is a teacher, and her mother just recently started going back to church. And my friend that works with me, she kind of questioned her mom, is like, you know, how do you reconcile with going to church and then celebrating All Souls Day? But the thing about it is, her mother does not know the history because it's perfectly fine because All Souls Day, as I just read, was instituted in, by the church. So she's perfectly well within her religious rights to celebrate All Souls Day and being a Christian. Because she's a school teacher and we know the climate in this country about our classrooms, you have to be very careful of what you teach these students. And so at this time of year, it's perfectly fine for them to celebrate Halloween. You know, they'll have their Halloween costumes, they'll have their, all of those things. But she has to be very careful if she's going to be teaching about All Souls Day. And so she's going to show the movie Coco, and she had to get parents' permission for their child to watch the movie. If you've never seen the movie Coco, it's a Disney Pixar picture, and it's an amazing, amazing cartoon. I love it. I watch it every year. But All Souls Day predates Halloween. And Halloween is just an extension of All Souls Day. But because we don't know our history, because we don't take the time to learn our history, people can tell us anything. So for parents to have a problem with All Souls Day and not a problem with Halloween, not understanding that they're both the same thing, is crazy. But again, that's because we let other people tell us about history instead of us researching it and learning it for ourselves. All right, so that is it for today. I hope you learned something today. Happy Halloween, happy All Souls Day. Um, Talk to your ancestors today. The veil is thin. It's going to be thin for the next 3 days, thinner than it is at most times. Visit your ancestors' grave sites. Visit the graveyards. Visit the crossroads. Visit nature. Visit a body of water. Pour libations. Leave out food for your ancestors. Give a special offering for them tomorrow. Don't forget to blow your cinnamon. Wash your hands with cinnamon daily. That helps to bring in wealth as well. I will still continue to bring stories of our ancestors. It may not always be about hoodoo. Again, it was primarily about it for this month because this is Hoodoo Heritage Month. But I'll continue to bring stories of our ancestors and the legacy that they left because I am a historian and I am a Jelly Musa, and that is my job. That is why they sent me here. So I would be disappointing them if I have all of this knowledge and I don't share it and allow you to glean from it. You know the drill. Love yourself, love each other, give yourself some grace, give others some grace, honor your ancestors, they will honor you. We are our ancestors. Stay warm, stay cool. It is extremely warm today for October 31st in Virginia. Extremely warm today. I voted today, got out there early and did my thing. Um, until next time, family, stay black. Peace.